G'day guys, and welcome back to the Australian Kart Class Podcast. Today we're going to be looking at why do fast drivers look slow. It's often so frustrating for parents or even other drivers who I'm competing against, and you look at the ease of some drivers and you're like, they're quick, it just looks easy for them. They're in control, not really mistakes. And then you're looking at some other drivers, in the mid-pack that look on edge. They look visually fast, like they're running over these curbs out of control and almost about to drop a wheel on every corner, like they're trying to maximize their package, but they're not quite on the pace. So what's making these faster drivers potentially look slow? Now, I remember driving myself and it felt busy. Like I remember pushing the limits and, qualifying wherever I qualified, but when I came in, so many drivers would be like, or so many parents would be like, mate, you look so smooth out there. And I'm thinking to myself, far out, I feel like I'm out of control. But clearly I was in control, and the subtle movements that I was making in the steering wheel, they felt a lot bigger from a driving aspect. So typically if I can see a driver's hands, moving around the corners, then it must feel pretty busy for them. And then when you see some drivers who are totally in control, you can barely see their hands moving. And obviously then the driver's like, it feels quite easy to drive. So you need to have processed what you're about to do a lot earlier. That's what the fast drivers are doing. They know they're driving on instinct, so they're working to the conditions they've got. Whether it's slippery, it's wet, it's grippy. They're finding their markers very early on. They're not just turning a corner and trying to work it out. They've already processed that information very, very quickly. And now when we have that happening, then we're going to be doing smooth inputs, and that's going to keep the kart in control. So now all of a sudden we've thought about, where we're going to apex 2 or 3 corners before we've even got there. And now because we're processing things earlier, we basically get the karts in the right position. We're not swinging back to take a certain corner. We've already got ourselves in position to take it with a smoother line. And now when you set up earlier, it comes back to that smoother inputs, more controlled cornering, powering in the right spots, braking with enough brake pressure so that the car doesn't sort of lose that rear end stability and you're having to try and catch it a lot. So you can still be on the edge and look a bit out of control, but generally those, top handful of drivers that are consistently at the top do look like they're doing it at about 80% of their capability. Now, the other thing is they don't get overcome by pressure. So what we tend to see is that if a driver finds speed over time and they get to the front of the pack for the first time or the first few times, obviously they're looking behind, more often. They're making more mistakes. So it looks like it's on edge. It looks like it's happening really fast because they're under pressure. They're feeling the heat from the drivers behind. And that's not a bad thing because at some point, if you're going to win races, you will feel that emotion. But it's the fast drivers that can maintain that composure so that they're not rushing into corners when they're feeling under pressure. And a couple of love taps from the driver behind is meant to unsettle that leading driver or the driver in front of you. So it's just knowing how to combat that with, if they're bumping you into a corner that they can't really pass on, don't go and overshoot the corner. Just check up a little bit earlier, get your exit right so that you're not vulnerable for the following corners. And that's what these more experienced and faster drivers are doing. They're not succumbing to that pressure. They're not looking behind 7 or 8 times a lap. They're looking behind in spots where they might be getting past. But then what they're going to do is in corners that you're not going to get any overtaking done, they're just going to focus on hitting their lines, being smooth and calculated and not making many mistakes. So it's about, it comes back to even when you're going through the pack, these fast drivers, is that they're passing in the right spots. So that's why it looks easy for them, because other drivers are trying to pass on every corner and it looks busy because they're out of control passing on these dangerous corners, where the faster and more experienced driver is going to pick and choose where to pass. It's not going to slow them down. They're going to make a pass, keep going through the pack, and it looks very, very simple. So if I can give some advice on how an erratic driver can try and improve with, smoothness, composure, it's with composure and stress, it's trying to take a couple of deep breaths on the straight. Obviously, you haven't got much time, when you're under pressure out there, but just trying to resettle and start your lap with a bit of composure. So you come on the straight, couple of big deep breaths, bang, you're into your lap. And then obviously you've got about between 35 and 50 seconds to try and concentrate for that lap. Then redo that process again. That sort of should help at least calm the nerves for the first few corners. And hopefully once you start your lap with a bit of composure and you're smooth, not making many mistakes, you can sort of keep that flow for the following part of the lap. When it comes from a smoother inputs, try and keep your arms a little bit straighter. So when we've got more of a bend in our arms, we tend to be a bit more erratic. And whether that's if we're clipping a curb or we're just trying to drive fast, there's more movement going on. And obviously if we want to keep control, we need to have less movement in our hands and in our arms. So just try and push your arms, push your hands into the steering wheel a bit more, try and straighten your posture out a little bit more. And yeah, a straighter arm should have more control when cornering. And then when it comes to just, like I said, having more time in your hands, it's just trying to think those 1 to 2 corners in advance so that you can place the car in the right position. At least it's going to set you up for the best chance. So they're the sort of the 3 things that I could try and provide some advice on when it comes to why some drivers look slow yet they're still dominant, and then why there's some erratic drivers out there because they're making silly decisions with trying to pass, in just places that you don't need to pass. They lose their minds when they're under pressure, and it's just their posture in the kart as to why they might be a little bit more erratic than other drivers. So hopefully this sort of information can help you out when it comes to, your next couple of times out in the track. Smooth is fast, in control, think ahead, and make some good calculated decisions when you're going through the pack. I hope it's benefited you this episode, and if it has, if you can pass it on to more in the karting community, that's obviously going to help us reach more people and, just better advise a lot of the karting parents out there. Until next time, guys, I appreciate you tuning in, and we'll speak to you guys soon. Cheers.